Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. Today we review something to get us into the Halloween spirit, 3 Dead Trick-or-Treaters.
Written and directed by Torin Langen, 3 Dead Trick-or-Treaters is an anthology film about a paperboy or paper man who discovers short stories on the graves of 3 dead trick-or-treaters. Each story represented by a short film that all kind of revolve around murder, cannibalism, and disturbing Halloween traditions. We're wearing these masks because they wear masks in the movie. We thought it would be a great idea, but they're really hard to talk in. We didn't make it very far into this before realizing these mustaches don't really work. I cut mine off so I could drink. I even got a straw.
I keep breathing in mine.
I don't know how everybody in this film did it, but we're gonna not do it now. It was fun while it lasted. Before we get into our likes, it is worth mentioning this is a silent film, so there are no lines of dialogue in the movie whatsoever. So what do we like?
I actually liked that there was no dialogue in this movie. It was very fitting. You know, at first I was a little hesitant. We were talking, we're about 20 minutes in, we're like, okay, how is this gonna play out? This seems like it's gonna be pretty boring. I knew exactly what was going on in this film with no words and no like subtitles or title cards. The characters delivered with their emotions.
Which is actually even better considering that this is an anthology, so you have multiple stories, and they were really easy to follow. So the writing and direction from Torin was excellent. I also think that Torin was the DP as well, so he shot it, and all of the shots in this movie were awesome. It seemed like every shot was intentionally artsy, whether it was a slider or if it was a really low angle and some kind of pan or rack focus or something. There was always something happening. Because there's no dialogue, you use the visuals to kind of tell the emotions and get the atmosphere across. And it's certainly a Halloween film.
I did enjoy the rapper in this one. I thought the concept was really good. Sometimes things don't need to be overcomplicated, and in this case, it's just a random guy reading stories of what has happened to these people in the grave.
So not actually reading aloud.
Not reading aloud, just reading the stories that our villain has written. I guess would we call him the villain, the writer? He's the bad guy.
Yeah, probably. Because he knows these dark secrets that led to the death of these 3 trick-or-treaters. With an anthology film, it's very difficult to go over everything because you don't want to spoil each of the stories, but there were a couple that I did enjoy more. So specifically the first one called Fondue, that was my favorite. This is pretty cut and dry. It's people getting their masks and then going to a house and having a fondue, a very weird fondue. And it was cool. Most anthologies are way more difficult to review, so we're reviewing this because it's actually like the same director who did everything across the board.
Just this whole film from start to finish, whether it's the rapper or one of the short stories, it feels as though it is the same film because it's one director. And on top of that, the Foley effects. With a film without dialogue, they were strong. When you're hearing people walking, the wind, leaves, any background noise, it's the most dominant in this film. And I thought he did a good job creating these impacts through the sound effects.
Now what didn't we like? I think my biggest issue is the fact that it feels like you're only going to get 3 stories and then they tack on like 2 other ones. Reading the synopsis and everything, even the title suggesting the 3 trick-or-treaters, you're like, okay, 3 short stories. But there actually is a 4th one that I didn't feel really fit the rest of them. It kind of seemed a little bit out of place. When the 3rd one wraps up, you're like, okay, those are all of our 3 stories, and you're kind of checking out of the movie, like just mentally. You're just like, okay, so now we're gonna get the rapper and we're gonna figure out what happens. And then they have another like 15-minute short. I wasn't really interested in it, and probably because the movie just kind of built up to end around there, and then there's an extra thing.
Even though I like the concept of the rapper, I wasn't a big fan of the overall delivery of it. It was the weakest aspect in all of the stories. I get where they were going with it, but when you're actually comparing it to everything else, and this is supposed to like tie it all in together, it just fell flat for me.
Well, I didn't feel we were missing anything from not having dialogue. Maybe in like 1 or 2 of the shorts, I wish there was something else. One of the shorts, there's like some homeless people that are eating blood and stuff. I didn't really dig that one. It kind of felt strange because there's not really a reason why they would be like drinking blood, and they don't really like tell you why. So maybe they're just so hungry that they only want to eat blood, even though when they have all this candy that they're trying to bury. I'm sure there's some kind of reasoning behind this, and I just didn't follow that one.
For me, it was the second one, the way that it was laid out, where these families get to like buy a person to torture them and do whatever they want to them. It just felt like it needed something because one of the characters builds sympathy for the person they bought. There needs to be more depth in their characters to understand why this person should care that they're saving their sacrifice.
And I understand that it's difficult to get across in a short film, but I guess that's also the reason why we don't review short films, because there are a lot of things that are excluded and left up to the viewer to try and piece together. And you make some assumptions, and you just have to assume that you're right. So perhaps this guy had a relationship with that other guy. That could have been it. Or maybe he was just, this is the year that I'm gonna fight back. You just don't know. Potentially that's what the intent was. I don't really like my stories done that way, but it is what it is. Now it's time for our final thoughts and ratings. Three Trick-or-Treaters was a surprise. I didn't know this was a silent film, but the way that everything was shot, the way that the actors portrayed what was actually happening, made it still easy to follow. I'm sure people could experiment with this more, actually. But again, you need to have everything really well put together in order for me to enjoy it, I think. It definitely has a great Halloween spirit and is gonna get you in the mood to celebrate Halloween, even if you have some weird traditions yourself. Like any anthology, I liked certain stories and I disliked some, but in general, I had a pretty good time. So I'm gonna give this 3.5 bloody candy corns out of 5.
For an anthology film, it had a really good concept. I enjoyed the wrapper and how it tied itself in. We did get an extra short that did feel out of place. I think if that was gone, this film would be much better, or rename it 4 Dead Trick-or-Treaters. Going off of the title, you would just assume it's 3, and when you get done that third one, you're gonna be reaching for the remote to turn it off. But you still got another 25 minutes of the film. So it kind of throws a curveball at you. But it's a good curveball because I did enjoy the film overall. I thought the cinematography was great. The acting was awesome. This is definitely a unique take on a Halloween film, and I think a lot of people should go and check it out. So with that being said, I'm gonna give this film 3.5 freshly baked cookies out of 5.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, there are links in the description where you can find it. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay updated with everything Bloodbath and beyond.